Eric Wind versus vintage Grand Seiko drama. On the first Rescapement podcast, Eric talks about vintage Grand Seiko for exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds, and internet is up in arms. So let's hear what exactly Eric said, and we're gonna break it down bit by bit, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I've actually never owned a Grand Seiko either, although I like the brand. I like.
So he starts pretty strong, right? He likes the brand, but he never owned vintage Grand Seiko. So this theme kind of you will hear it over and over in what he said. He admits that he doesn't know about vintage Grand Seiko that much. Let's hear what he says next. So for kind of like maybe 40 seconds, it's a little bit boring segment, but let's get over it. After that, it's going to get much more interesting.
Who is the North American president? He previously was at Omega when I was involved with the Speedmaster 50 auction in 2015 at Christie's. We worked closely with him when I did a kind of a tour of the country to a few different Omega boutiques with some of the highlighted lots. So it's phenomenal what they've done. Very, very smart. Leadership. They're not throwing money around from what I can see. They're investing very wisely in the small number of things they do. Definitely could see.
Okay, so he likes North American CEO. He likes what modern Grand Seiko does. I don't know why he's talking about it when he was asked about vintage Grand Seiko, but like it cannot be bad, right? That's kind of like a either like nothing or a positive message, right? Okay, let's hear what he's gonna say next.
That the vintage Grand Seiko models were going to take off, and in fact, some of the VFA models, talking to people that follow those, they would value them at over $100,000, some of the rare ones. So if we saw that happen at auction, I think it would go, even crazier. It's a watch where a lot of people feel like they should own one. It's like the collector's secret or whatever.
Okay, so this is very, very positive, right? So he thinks that vintage Grand Seiko will take off. He thinks that a vintage Grand Seiko will, like some watches might even exceed $100,000, which is like right now for vintage Grand Seiko, this is unthinkable. Like no watch sold anywhere close to $100,000, right? And he also says that people want the watch, people are seeking the watch. This is like super positive. But let's hear what he says next.
I guess as a result, I might push back against that a little bit, even though I like them. But the cases are not my favorite, to be honest, compared to Swiss cases. The lugs are pretty chunky for having such refined dials. I do like the dials, and I like the hands on these a lot.
Okay, so here somehow like nobody picked that up. So first of all, positive message. He likes the dials. He likes the hands a lot. That's positive, right? But after he says something like very odd, right? He says that he likes Swiss cases more than he likes Grand Seiko. Like what the hell he's talking about? It makes no sense. It's like somebody would say that, I like how Toyota looks much more than I like how Ferrari looks, because Ferraris have these like thick, chunky wheels. But like, it makes no sense. Like, have you seen Ferrari? What the hell are you talking about? Like if you, so I have here. I don't want to talk too much about it. So I have kind of high-end Swiss Movado watch from 60s, right? And I have Grand Seiko from 60s. This is uncomparable. This is not even in the same league. There is a reason, and Grand Seiko was actually making these Swiss cases. So like if you look at Grand Seiko first, they made cases exactly like Swiss did, but it was pedestrian, it was boring, it was bad. So that's the whole point why Taro Tanaka come up with Grammar of Design. That's the whole point why they make these like super highly like there's so much manual work to create these cases, to do this like Zaratsu polishing, to do all these lines, to do this like it's like the Grand Seiko is not even in the same league as Swiss cases. So again, like, why would you say that? He probably says that because, again, he doesn't know vintage Grand Seiko. Like, if he would see like few of them, if he would hold like few of them in their hand, if his hand, like, he would never say that. Okay, let's hear what he says next.
The other element I would say about why I really haven't purchased them is, not knowing the market precisely, but more importantly, not knowing the exact specifics of what I'm buying. Many of these watches, to my understanding, they're almost all were sold in Japan originally, almost exclusively for the Grand Seikos. So I'm not really finding them from original owners. I bought King Seikos before. I bought tons of Seikos from original owners here in the US. But I've never seen a Grand Seiko original owner watch, whether I was at Christie's or just as an independent dealer. And that's one way, as you buy more of something, you understand what's correct or not.
Okay, so he says, again, he acknowledges that he doesn't know the market, right? He acknowledges that he doesn't know the watches. So if he would like get a watch, he cannot say like what's original, what's not original, what's fake. But he also says that he wants to learn. And he is learning, so we're gonna talk later about it, but for now, let's just hear that. So he says that he has this like original owner idea, which we're gonna discuss later, but he's learning through that weird original owner idea, and he wants to learn, but he cannot get any these like original owner watches that he wants, and that's why he didn't learn, right? But he wants to learn. Okay, so now in the next 8 seconds in what he said, that's the part that broke the internet. That's the most outrageous thing that he said, right? If you're just a vintage Grand Seiko collector, you will not get what the hell he's saying and why he's saying that. So bear with me, right? So let's listen to these 8 seconds, what Eric is saying. But if you want to understand it, forget about Grand Seiko, forget about vintage Grand Seiko. Think about, let's hear this and let's think that, let's say he's talking about Rolex, right? And after that we're gonna come to Grand Seiko, but let's hear Eric, and let's just hear the word Rolex instead of the word Grand Seiko, and it will make much more sense for you. Okay, let's do it.
So my sense is many of the watches might be kind of Frankenstein watches or modified, improved, and
okay. So if he's talking about Rolex, what he just said makes a lot of sense, right? So these watches are way more expensive than like anything. Like Grand Seiko is not even like in that league, right? Like they can sell for like millions of dollars. They sell all the time over $100,000. Very expensive. And all this like Frankenstein watches, modified, improved. This is happening all the time, absolutely, like all the time. And this is happening because they are very expensive. It makes sense for you to put a lot of intensive, very expensive work to either build the watch or maybe like modify it, improve it. Makes sense, and it's happening all the time. And Eric is very nice guy. He's very interesting guy. If you listen to all these Zooms, lectures that he's doing, actually I highly recommend Eric. He's very open about it. He's talking about all these problems in Rolexes. That's something what he knows very well. And also the issue with these Frankenstein modified improved watches, that it's almost impossible to tell what was done to the watch. Or maybe it's impossible to tell, right? And now how does Eric how can Eric actually do business, right? Like his business is to sell watches, right? Now, if he's very open that all of these watches are Frankenstein modified, improved, like nobody would buy any watches from him, right? So he has this idea. Now we are coming back, right? He has this idea to this like original owner watch, right? So I just don't want to make this video super long. Yes, so that does not make sense, right? But Eric convinced his clients that what he's selling, all of these watches, are original owner watches, right? So despite that there is a bunch of problems in the Rolex world, but the watches that Eric is selling, these are original owner watches. That's why they can trust Eric that these watches are not Frankenstein modified, right? So now we are coming back to Grand Seiko, and now it will make a lot of sense to you, because so what Eric thinks is all the watch, now he kind of like extrapolates it to the whole vintage market, right? So he thinks now all the watches have this problem that Rolex has, and now all the watches that he is not 100% sure are original owner watches, they like, who knows, like he doesn't know them, so he just assumes that these watches are Frankenstein modified improved watches. So what Eric doesn't understand here is that vintage Grand Seiko is super cheap. Most of these watches sell for, I don't know, between like $1,000 and $2,000. There are some problems, right? So there are like, people can, like, I don't know, can polish a case a little bit, can do something on the dial that is easy. So I actually made a video about it. You can still see it with your own eyes, and you can say, okay, this is redial, this is not redial, right? So what Eric doesn't know is that vintage Grand Seiko right now is one of the easiest brands to collect, and these problems that Rolex has, vintage Grand Seiko doesn't have them yet, because the prices didn't reach the same level. So let's hear what he says next.
Kind of the collector community of Grand Seiko people, some of them have turned me off as well. I won't name names now, maybe in a future episode. But that turns me off, because if you have a collector community that's very like welcoming and open and stuff, that really has a big impact, I would say, on wanting to own it. So basic one.
Okay, so here again, this is just wrong what he said. So like, I know that I was very welcomed by vintage Grand Seiko collectors. Like I learned everything from the research and just help of other people in Seiko, Grand Seiko community. Like this is very welcoming and helpful. Like I know, take a look how much research Gerald did, for example, how much research he put on his website. Like it's like that, and it's like everywhere in Seiko community like that. I can prove what Eric said is wrong by people that Eric respects a lot. On a GBTalks podcast, two people that Eric admires, George Bamford and Stephen Pulver. They are talking about vintage Grand Seiko. Again, that's the same topic, right? But what's interesting is about 15 minutes of that podcast, they are raving how great vintage Grand Seiko community is. Both George and Steven say like, oh my god, these people, they have like no gain, but they help me so much, and they're helping me right now. This is such a great community. What the hell Eric is talking about? This is like Grand Seiko community is like one of the best communities in the watch collecting world. Okay, I have some ideas, but let's just not make this video super long. Let's move on.
I wouldn't go and buy one from some of the people that really traffic in the brand, and I still hope to find one from an original owner one day, or find many of them, but Japan is kind of a closed society in terms of watches and everything else. It's very hard to get watches out of there based on shipping. Oftentimes people do transactions in cash. So if they're selling them or buying them, they'll bring literally suitcases of cash around Tokyo. So it's It's not like I'm going to get an email out of the blue from someone in Japan who's an original owner of a Grand Seiko and want to ship it to me by FedEx or something. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately, where it does with many other countries and brands.
Okay, so on positive, right? So on positive is that Eric wants to buy vintage Grand Seiko, right? And again, he acknowledges that he doesn't know much because he says like he doesn't know how to buy vintage Grand Seiko, and he is making this like ridiculous statement about bags of cash. This is just like people are making fun of it, and it's well deserved, right? Well deserved because like I don't know, like I have multiple friends that own a vintage Grand Seiko, and not one of them actually brought bag of cash to like Tokyo and like exchange this bag of cash for the watches. It's like ridiculous. So again, Eric just says that, hey guys, like I just don't know much about this brand, and he shows it, and he shows it in this statement about bags of cash, but he wants to buy it, right? So if Eric, if you want to buy vintage Grand Seiko, or anybody who's watching this video wants to buy vintage Grand Seiko, please click over here. I made a very simple like 10-minute video. Like if you do everything what my video says, it's very simple. Like vintage Grand Seiko is one of the easiest brands to collect and one of the easiest brands to figure out if everything's authentic and everything's matches and everything what it should be. Just watch that video, like your mind will be blown. You will be able to buy vintage Grand Seiko much better than Eric can. How about that? Okay, also Eric, if you're watching it, I'm sure you're not, but I'm become such a big YouTuber that Eric watches my videos. Let's do part 2. So I'm sure that Eric, you wanna address what you said. Like you're not some kind of like enemy of the vintage Grand Seiko. Like you're a nice guy. I'm watching your lectures and Zooms, and like you're a great guy. Let's do part 2 of this with you, and you will address concerns of vintage Grand Seiko community. And if you like vintage watches, please subscribe to my channel, please hit like on this video, please press here on my face and click this nice subscribe button. Thank you for watching. Bye.